Well, as I live and breathe, if it isn't the internet. Hello, darlings. Have you got your nightcaps on? Never forget. Let's climb into bed together, shall we? Although it's been quite hot, and I don't want to turn on the air conditioner, so let's sweat together. How about that? Can you hear me out there in internet land? Hello, darlings. Let's make sure I've got you. Hello, hello. I am back, darlings. I am back. I took a bit of a hiatus. I took a bit of a break. But here I am with all of you again. And my thighs, apparently. They were invited to this party. Darlings, it is my pleasure and my privilege to be your GlamourHobo bedtime tale teller, as usual. On Monday nights, here on the Nat 21 Adventures Twitch channel, I read you some classic science fiction or some slash fiction or just cool shit that I like. And I love reading aloud, and I love that you are here and that it is bedtime. We're doing it an hour earlier than we did before, so I hope that more of you are arriving. So drop a hello to your fellow bedtime tale cateers, like mouse-cateers. It's all the people who show up in the evenings to gather round the fire of the internet, because it is a bit of a dumpster fire, and listen to some stories and drink tea. Of course, we always drink tea. I've got my little tea set right here. I actually brought it into bed with me. It's a little caffeine for the night. No sugar, no honey, just some really high quality Persian tea. Can you smell it? That bergamot. Hello, Sally. Hello, Sako. Hello, Bill. Hello, Zahina Sharice Whitaker. It's the bergamot that gets me. It's what I wake up in the morning with. It's what I go down with at the end of the day. Speaking of going down at the end of the day, today is the eve of Saint Frida's Day. Saint Frida Khalo. One of my favorite revolutionary women, a surrealist painter, a badass bitch, and a lover and a queer. And it's not just that she had this cult of personality. She really was an excellent artist, and just her clothes are so gorgeous. The textiles, so much. So I'm extremely inspired by her. July 6th is her saint day, and I will read to you now from the back of her saint's pillar, which I bought at an art museum a few months ago when I was on an adventure, and I find that's perfect. So here we are. Patron saint of monkeys, thwarted lovers, and unibrows. O resilient Saint Frida, powerful painter of suffering and stoicism, we ask your pity and protection in times of affliction. Grant that we might, as you did, make art instead of excuses in the face of life's many obstacles. May your devotees find in you the inspiration to meet hardship with flamboyance, to turn disappointed longing into inventive expression, and to cast shade over the glare of indifferent lovers. Blessed be, amen, hear, hear, Nostrovia. This is so gorgeous. I'm going to get a little closer so you can actually see how pretty this is. And it's got gold in it. There's a little monkey. So I'm going to wear my hair like her tomorrow. I'm going to dress like her tomorrow. I'm going to make some weird surrealist art tomorrow. I'm going to be fully in my power tomorrow. And I have to say, like, she lived in a constant state of physical pain because of an accident that she suffered when she was young, a bus accident, an omnibus accident. And she had a torrid affair life with Diego Rivera. And they figured out their shit by the end. You know, they were, she was queer and they had multiple lovers who did not mingle. And in the end, they realized that they wanted to be near each other, but they couldn't be with each other. So they built houses with a bridge between them, a sky bridge, so they could be fully embodied in who they were, be honest, be sincere about their needs and their boundaries, and then be able to cross the bridge and be together when they wanted to. I love that. So tell me how you're going to celebrate St. Frida's Day. I also recommend watching the amazing Julie Taymor movie, Frida, with Selma Hayek. It came out in like the early 2000s. It is a painting come to life. It is gorgeous. It's how I learned about who she was when I was like 13, maybe. I'm not sure. All right. Since we're coming back after some time away, and I've had a lot on my mind. I don't know what you guys have been doing, but I've had a lot on my mind. And a lot of it is, you know, normal stuff like smashing the patriarchy and starting a revolution. That's the other great thing about Frida. She was socialist. She was actually a communist, but I've had a lot on my mind about how we build this world and how we get the things that we have and how are we worthy of the things that we have. So today I spent time actually making things with my own two hands, some beautiful boutonnieres out of real flowers and some also plastic fake flowers for friends to go to a wedding that I sadly cannot attend. And every time I work with plastics, I think about the cost. And every time I work with stuff I get from thrift stores, I think about the cost, not the cost of what it costs to get it, but the cost of what it was made with and what ended up downstream. And I think that if you're not willing to give that your consideration, that is the problem. You can come to a conclusion. I don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to agree with mine about what you're going to do about the truth of how things are in this world, but you have to give it your consideration. The show I'm building right now, Journey to the Kingdom of Hypnos, is about that. It is about stepping away from obliviousness, because that is a choice, but it sneaks up on you, and it invades people's lives. It invades their minds to just choose to be oblivious instead of to choose to know. And so I choose to know, and I want you to choose to know. But more than anything, I want you to give it your consideration and make a choice. Don't let your choices be made for you. So on this note, we're going to read some Ursula K. LeGuin. And if you have 3 guesses about what story it is based on that introduction, drop it in the chat. And we're going to read the whole thing. This was written in 1979 by esteemed science fiction writer Ursula K. Le Guin. It's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. With a clamor of bells that set the swallows soaring, the festival of summer came to the city of Omelas, bright towered by the sea. The rigging of the boats in harbor sparkled with flags. In the streets between houses with red roofs and painted walls, between old moss-grown gardens and under avenues of trees, past great parks and public buildings, processions moved. Some were decorous, old people in long, stiff robes of mauve and gray, grave master workmen, quiet, merry women carrying their babies and chatting as they walked. In other streets, the music beat faster, a shimmering of gong and tambourine, and the people went dancing. The procession was a dance. Children dodged in and out, their high calls rising like the swallows crossing flights over the music and the singing. All the processions wound towards the north side of the city, were on the great water meadow called the Green Fields. Boys and girls, naked in the bright air, with mud-stained feet and ankles and long, lithe arms, exercised their restive horses before the race. The horses wore no gear at all, but a halter without a bit. Their manes were braided with streamers of silver, gold, and green. They flared their nostrils and pranced and boasted to one another. They were vastly excited, the horse being the only animal who has adopted our ceremonies as his own. Far off to the north and west of the mountains stood up half-encircling Omelas on her bay. The air of morning was so clear that the snow still crowning the 18 peaks burned with white gold fire across the miles of sunlit air under the dark blue of the sky. There was just enough wind to make the banners that marked the racecourse snap and flutter now and then. In the silence of the broad green meadows, one could hear the music winding through the city streets. Farther and nearer and ever approaching, a cheerful faint sweetness of the air that from time to time trembled and gathered together and broke out into the great joyous clanging of the bells. Joyous! How is one to tell about joy? How describe the citizens of Omelas? They were not simple folk, you see, though they were happy. But we do not say the words of cheer much anymore. All smiles have become archaic. Given a description such as this one tends to make certain assumptions. Given a description much as this one tends to look next for the king, mounted on a splendid stallion and surrounded by his noble knights, or perhaps in a golden litter borne by great muscled slaves. But there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves. They were not barbarians. I do not know the rules and laws of their society, but I suspect that they were singularly few. As they did without monarchy and slavery, so they also got on without the stock exchange, the advertisement, the secret police, and the bomb. Yet I repeat that these were not simple folk, not dulcet shepherds, noble savages, bland utopians. They were not less complex than us. The trouble is that we have a bad habit, encouraged by pedants and sophisticates, of considering happiness as something rather stupid. Only pain is intellectual, only evil interesting. This is the treason of the artist, a refusal to admit the banality of evil and the terrible boredom of pain. If you can't lick 'em, join 'em. If it hurts, repeat it. But to praise despair is to condemn delight. To embrace violence is to lose hold of everything else. We have almost lost hold. We can no longer describe a happy man, nor make any celebration of joy. How can I tell you about the people of Omelas? They were not naive and happy children, though their children were, in fact, happy. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not wretched. Oh, miracle! But I wish I could describe it better. I wish I could convince you. Omelas sounds in my words like a city in a fairy tale, long ago and far away, once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagined it as your own fancy bids, assuming it will rise to the occasion, for certainly I cannot suit you all. For instance, how about technology? I think that there would be no cars or helicopters in and above the streets. This follows from the fact that the people of Omelas are happy people. Happiness is based on a just discrimination of what is necessary, what is neither necessary nor destructive, and what is destructive. In the middle category, however, that of the unnecessary but undestructive, that of comfort, luxury, exuberance, etc., they could perfectly well have central heating, subway trains, washing machines, and all kinds of marvelous devices not yet invented here, floating light sources, fuelless power, a cure for the common cold. Or they could have none of that. It doesn't matter. As you like it. I incline to think that people from towns up and down the coast have been coming into Omelas during the last days before the festival on very fast little trains and double-decked trams, and that the train station of Omelas is actually the handsomest building in town, though plainer than the magnificent farmers' market. But even granted trains, I fear that Omelas so far strikes some of you as goody-goody. Smiles, bells, parades, horses, bleh. If so, please add an orgy. If an orgy would help, don't hesitate. Let us not, however, have temples from which issue beautiful nude priests and priestesses already half in ecstasy and ready to copulate with any man or woman, lover or stranger, who desires union with the deep godhead of the blood, although that was my first idea. But really, it would be better not to have any temples in Omelas. At least not manned temples. Religion, yes. Clergy, no. Surely the beautiful nudes can just wander about, offering themselves like divine soufflés to the hunger of the needy and the rapture of the flesh. Let them join the processions. Let tambourines be struck above the copulations, and the glory of desire be proclaimed upon the gongs. And, a not unimportant note, let the offspring of these delightful rituals be beloved and looked after by all. One thing I know there is none of in Omelas is guilt. But what else should there be? I thought at first there were no drugs, but that is puritanical. For those who like it, the faint, insistent sweetness of druse may perfume the ways of the city. Druse, which first brings a great lightness and brilliance to the mind and limbs, and then after some hours, a dreamy languor, and wonderful visions at last of the very arcana and inmost secrets of the universe, as well as exciting the pleasure of sex beyond all belief. And it is not habit-forming. For more modest tastes, I think there ought to be beer. What else? What else belongs in the joyous city? The sense of victory, surely, the celebration of courage. But as we did without clergy, let us do without soldiers. The joy built upon successful slaughter is not the right kind of joy. It will not do, it is fearful, and it is trivial. a boundless and generous contentment, a magnanimous triumph, felt not against some outer enemy, but in communion with the finest and fairest in the souls of all men everywhere, and the splendor of the world's summer. This is what swells the hearts of the people of Omelas, and the victory they celebrate is that of life. I really don't think many of them need to take drugs. Most of the processions have reached the green fields by now. A marvelous smell of cooking goes forth from the red and blue tents of the provisioners. The faces of small children are amiably sticky. In the benign gray beard of a man, a couple of crumbs of rich pastry are entangled. The youths and girls have mounted their horses and are beginning to group around the starting line of the course. An old woman, small, fat, and laughing, is passing out flowers from a basket, and tall young men wear her flowers in their shining hair. A child of 9 or 10 sits at the edge of the crowd, alone, playing on a wooden flute. People pause to listen, and they smile. But they do not speak to him, for he never ceases playing and never sees them, his dark eyes wholly wrapped in the sweet, thin magic of the tune. He finishes, and slowly lowers his hands, folding the wooden flute. As if that little private silence were the signal, all at once a trumpet sounds from the pavilion near the starting line, imperious, melancholy, piercing. The horses rear on their slender legs, and some of them neigh in answer. Sober-faced, the young riders stroke their horses' necks and soothe them, whispering, "Quiet, quiet there, my beauty, my hope." They begin to form a rank along the starting line. The crowds along the race course are like a field of grass and flowers in the wind. The festival of summer has begun. Do you believe? Do you accept the festival, the city, the joy? No? Then let me describe one more thing. In a basement, under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of its spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light seeps into dustily between cracks in the boards, second-hand from a cobwebbed window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the little room, a couple of mops with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads stand near a rusty bucket. The floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 paces long and 2 wide, a mere broom closet or disused tool room. In the room, a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. It looks to be about 6, but actually is nearly 10. It is feeble-minded. Perhaps it was born defective, or perhaps it has become imbecile through fear, malnutrition, and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals as it sits hunched in the corner farthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows the mops are still standing there and the door is locked and no one will come. The door is always locked, and nobody ever comes, except that sometimes the child has no understanding of time or interval. Sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer in at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and the water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked. The eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything. But the child, who has not always lived in the tool room, and can remember sunlight and its mother's voice, sometimes speaks. "I will be good," it says. "Please let me out. I will be good." They never answer. The child used to scream for help at night and cry a good deal, but now it only makes a kind of whining, "Ee-ah, ee-ah," and it speaks less and less often. It is so thin, there are no calves to its legs, its belly protrudes, it lives on a half bowl of cornmeal and grease a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are a mass of festered sores as it sits in its own excrement continually. They all know it is there, all the people of Omelas. Some of them have come to see it, others are content merely to know it is there. They all know that it has to be there. Some of them understand why, and some do not, but they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their city, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest, and the kindly weathers of their skies depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. This is usually explained to children when they are between 8 and 12, whichever they seem capable of understanding. And most of those who come to see the child are young people. Though often enough an adult comes or comes back to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, those young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight. They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all the explanations. They would like to do something for the child, but there is nothing they can do. If the child were brought up into the sunlight, out of that vile place, if it were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done, in that day and hour, all the prosperity and beauty and delight of Omelas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace of every life in Omelas for that single small improvement. To throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of the happiness of one. That would be to let guilt within the walls indeed. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often the young people go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and faced this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks or years, but as time goes on, they begin to realize that even if the child could be released, it would not get much good of its freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, no doubt, but little more. It is too degraded and imbecile to know any real joy. It has been afraid too long ever to be free of fear. Its habits are too uncouth for it to respond to humane treatment. Indeed, after so long, it would probably be wretched without walls about it to protect it, and darkness for its eyes, and its own excrement to sit in. Their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality, and to accept it. Yet it is their tears and anger, the trying of their generosity, and the acceptance of their helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of the splendor of their lives. Theirs is no vapid, irresponsible happiness. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion. It is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were not there sniveling in the dark, the other one, the flute player, could make no joyful music as the young riders line up in their beauty for the race in the sunlight of the first morning of summer. Now do you believe in them? Are they not more credible? But there is one more thing to tell, and this is quite incredible. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys who go to see the child does not go home to weep or rage, does not, in fact, go home at all. Sometimes also a man or woman much older falls silent for a day or two and then leaves home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking and walk straight out of the city of Omelas through the beautiful gates. They keep walking across the farmlands of Omelas. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Night falls. The traveler must pass down the village streets between the houses with the yellow-lit windows and on out into the darkness of the fields. Each alone, they go west or north toward the mountains. They go on. They leave Omelas. They walk ahead into the darkness, and they do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It is possible that it does not exist. But they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas. That is an Ursula K. LeGuin story from 1973. Excuse me, not 79. Called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Heavy way to start the new season, dear ones. I also read this in college, Johnny O Twitch. I read it in an English class, a freshman level English class that I didn't end up taking until I was a senior. But I think about it all the time. That was many years ago, but I think about it all the time. Every time I have to make a decision about how I want to live in this world, modern conveniences, how I eat, how I dress, the technology that allows me to do this, it comes with a price, an extractive price. And as I said at the beginning, it is worthy of our consideration. Nothing should be taken for granted. The show that I'm building is called Journey to the Kingdom of Hypnos. It's a 25-minute long guided audio adventure that will be available at the end of July, along with the Cleveland Border Light Festival. It's a fringe out of Ohio, where I'm from. And it's a similar idea, perhaps trickled up in my brain from Ursula K. LeGuin from all those years ago. But it will be led by the goddess of memory, known as Mnemosyne. And it takes you down into the Hellenic underworld, the underworld of Hades and Persephone. Although I just learned that Persephone was actually the queen of the underworld long before Hades showed up in some classics. Little did I know. But the underworld is a vast place. It is not just for the dead. And that is where sleep lives. Sleep is a god and the personification of our unconsciousness. And that's where dreams live. Dreams are actual creatures that come and visit us. It's where memory lives. It's where oblivion lives. It's where death lives. Death with a capital D, as Terry Pratchett would say. It's where creatures like sloth and angelics and nymphs and all stripes live down there. There's a story actually about Hera sent a messenger to sleep. Her name was Iris, and she said, wear your brightest outfit so that you can stay awake when you're down there. So she wore the rainbow to keep her awake. I love the idea that it is a literal interpretation of wear your brightest clothes, your loudest clothes, so that you don't fall asleep in the court of the king of sleep. So memory, and there's a story, a tradition that memory is a lake and oblivion is a stream. And when you die, you are brought down into the underworld and you have a choice immediately to wipe away the life that you've had, drink from the waters of oblivion, and then you can rest peacefully for a while and then eventually be reincarnated without any of your baggage. Or you can drink from the waters of memory and you remember literally everything. Every life you've ever lived comes back and it just like pushes you into this torpor of knowing until the nymphs take care of you and you can recover yourself. And there's this idea that the Orphics had that you could go down into the underworld without having to be dead first and drink of the waters of memory. And there were temples devoted to this. It's really fascinating, the idea of it. So in the story that I'm building, you are called to speak with memory as a personification, as a goddess, my voice. And she takes you on a journey down to her home, to her lake. So you go down through the underworld on a dirigible, but she's worried about you. She's showing you the way so that you know how to get there again, so that the next time you sleep, the next time you want to travel, or even when the veil parts and you pass on, you know how to get there and you can make an informed choice instead of just accepting drinks from strangers and blacking out. So, just an oversimplification, but it fits. The drama is that Lethe, Oblivion, her river is overgrowing its banks and she is pushing out into the waking world more and more. She's not just in the underworld, that there is trouble, that oblivion and obliviousness and forgetfulness is coming to the waking world. And so Mnemosyne is here not to fight her sister, but to keep her in balance and to check her by giving waking conscious beings the ability to make choices that are informed. Like perhaps you're manspreading on the subway and you do not realize, you're oblivious to the fact that you are invading other people's spaces. Perhaps you have no idea about the 80,000-year-old living culture of the Aboriginals in Australia because you thought that that land was completely devoid of human life before white people showed up. And that's what you choose to believe. That's the obliviousness and the ignorance. And perhaps it's even as personal as like just refusing to learn from mistakes and traumas, that bad things happen to you and you just lock them up and put them away, and you can't look at them at all and you can't face them, and that oblivion cannot come soon enough so that you do not have to live in that unresolved pain any longer. I think that Lethe, oblivion, is being called to the waking world like a magnet, that it's this mass, it's a tipping point that's pulling her there more and more. And she's not has no agenda. She has no agenda, but she is a little drunk with power. She's not meant to be this way, to be so big, to be so powerful. She is a creature that is here for relief. That's what she believes. So it's not a battle between memory and oblivion, but it is an investigation about how sleep is not oblivion. Sleep is a dense, beautifully robust place. And this underworld starts in the Hellenic style, the Greek style, but I want to incorporate other underworlds and other traditions of sleep into it, because I honestly believe that sleep is where we connect unconsciously to other people. It is a place that you can go, or it is a channel to get to other places. It is a necessary piece of being a human being. So maybe that's our most neutral ground. So that's the show I'm building. It's called Journey to the Kingdom of Hypnos. You can follow me on all the socials for little gobbets of it that I'm dropping. I've got a photo shoot that I did a while back that is gorgeous and I'm super proud of. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to shamelessly say, I am a working artist. And if you're nourishing the service and enjoying yourself this evening, I know it got real heavy real fast. Please tip me on PayPal, or become a patron, which is a total possibility. Everybody knows about Patreon these days, and you can find me by name. But we have a little bit of a shorter show today, just to get back in the saddle. I've been gone for a month. As I said, my name is Carmel. Every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, I will be reading some science fiction, classic or otherwise, to you here in the internet. I hope you've all been well. I hope that you internalize the story a bit and you give it a think and give it your consideration. That is the least we can do. And don't forget to celebrate St. Frida's Day tomorrow, July 6th. It is her birthday. Look her up, watch the Julie Taymor movie, look at her art. I'm going to be spamming all of my socials with stuff about her. So if you follow me, that's a good place to start. But it has been my pleasure and my privilege to be here with you as always. Good night.